I like to rant. Ranting is fun. It also cleanses the soul.
Detroit is to be one of the best sports cities in the country, if not the best.
Surely Javi can't be as bad this year as he was last year. Surely that can't be the case.
One of the worst offenses, if not the worst offense, like in the modern era of baseball. Just absolutely atrocious. He is a piece to the puzzle. He is not the entire puzzle.
Right.
He's a puzzle piece, but he is not the entire puzzle.
This is the Michigan and Trumbull podcast with your hosts, Alex S. Freeman and Luke Giaconis. Hello and welcome to the Michigan and Trumbull podcast. I'm Alex Freeman, joined as always by Luke Giaconis. Luke, is that a Florida Everglades hat that you're wearing?
That is a Florida Everblades hat that I'm wearing, and you got your tongue, sir. This is the back-to-back-to-back Kelly Cup champions, Florida Everblades. Last night they pulled off the three-peat. That's right. As I've moved to Florida, I've become a halfway decent minor league hockey guy. So I'm now, and officially as of next year, I'm a Blades 365 member. So I'm a season ticket holder. When I say season ticket holder, I mean I bought the lowest and the most affordable package. I'm not dropping $3,000 on hockey tickets at this point in life, but maybe someday. But yes, go Blades. Congrats on the back-to-back-to-back success. They pulled off the three-peat. The dynasty is alive and well in Southwest Florida for minor league hockey.
I do often associate the state of Florida with ice hockey. So, which I guess I should.
You should.
The Tampa Bay Lightning have been great. The Florida Panthers are literally playing for a Stanley Cup right now.
Game one last night against the Oilers. Yeah.
The Everblades will not give up the Kelly Cup.
They will not. They will. Since
I said that,
I
knew what I was talking about.
I loved everything that you said there. I would truly love to become more of a hockey fan. I really, out of the four professional sports, I've already got baseball and football checked off the list. I love those two. Hockey, I stand by, I think, is the best sporting event to watch live, even more
100%.
so than baseball. I absolutely love baseball.
Hockey is incredible live.
It's great. It's great. The one I really don't give a crap about is basketball. I have a hard time watching it. Even when I've seen it live, it doesn't do a ton for me. I've always been terrible at it, so that's been out of the equation. So yeah, basketball is the one for me I could kind of care less about, but hockey, I would love to become more of a hockey fan. And it's actually very funny because my grandfather was a huge hockey fan. Coached hockey. My uncle played hockey. We were a hockey family. At least my mom, was when they were all growing up as kids. And as when we were born, like me, my brother, my sister, none of us we weren't really a hockey family. So it didn't really transcend there or transition with generation. But yeah, maybe one day. Yeah, the Panthers are playing for the Stanley Cup in the second year in a row. And let's see if they can do it. Let's see if they can beat up on the Oilers. They're up 1-0. So, yeah, good stuff.
Now, in defense of basketball, Luke, I think basketball is the sport where, especially at the NBA level, and I imagine at the WNBA as well, that it matters so much where your seats are based on what your level of enjoyment is going to be at that game, unless you're just like a basketball fan in general. But having had the privilege of winning a pair of tickets to being 7 rows off of the court at an NBA game, that is a very different experience, and that is probably one of my favorite sporting experiences of my life. And honestly, if somebody said to me, like, here's a blank check, but you have to spend it on season tickets to a local sports team, I would do Knicks floor seats in an instant. It's just
interesting.
Like it is such a fun time down there that is sort of unmatched by anything I've experienced anywhere else. Lower bowl NBA, that's the way to go.
I've been to one NBA game in my life, and I sat in the nosebleeds at the United Center about 2 years ago for the Bulls versus the Nuggets. And it was fun, but didn't change my life by any means. I think I've always said one of my goals in life is to become a season ticket holder, like that has legitimate, like what you're saying, like courtside seats or like 50-yard line seats or behind home plate seats. Unfortunately, we're not there yet in terms of the financial aspect. Maybe
Just a
someday.
few more
But,
listeners
yeah.
of the Michigan in Trumbull podcast, and you'll see us courtside with Dave Portnoy at Barstool.
That'll be us. That'll be us. We'll be right there. We'll be right there. No, it's definitely a dream at some point. So hopefully it will happen. But I'm going on a quick tangent here as well, real quick, as we kind of feed into this episode, talking about teams that are good or not good with our Tigers. Or where do they fall? We'll see. More to come. But the state of Florida overall as a whole, we are, I should say, because I live in Florida. It's the state I live in. Sometimes that's something I don't want to take pride in, a lot of times. But I am a firm believer, or the state of Florida overall, very good at sports, like solid all across the board. If you go from the 4 major sports, they've got them covered. They've got them covered. They got good hockey teams with the Panthers and the Lightning. They've got a pretty decent team in the Orlando Magic, the Miami Heat, definitely solid in the NBA. Baseball is where they kind of fall off a little bit. The Rays aren't that great this year, but generally speaking, Rays are pretty solid. Marlins are pretty awful, so I'll give you that one there. And then with football, you got the Jaguars, you got the Dolphins, and you got the Buccaneers. 3 solid teams across the board. So the state of Florida is definitely alive and well in terms of our sports, the professional sports that we play. So
I'll give you the Dolphins when they win a playoff game.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I can say that now because the Lions have recently won a playoff game, so I can get snarky about that.
I haven't seen the Bears win a playoff game since I believe James Madison was in office.
I don't even remember what president James Madison is.
I think we were talking about this the other day here. Wasn't he like 4th?
Sounds right. That sounds right. We've lost the plot.
We have ran the gauntlet from minor league hockey to presidents, and that's the kind of entertainment you get here on the Michigan and Trumbull podcast. And we only talk about things outside of the Tigers.
A Detroit Tigers podcast. We'll bring it back. So with the presidents, another piece of presidential trivia that I'm sure most Michigan folks know, but we shared in a chat recently. The only person to ever serve as president but not be elected to that office or the office of the vice presidency was Michigan's own Gerald Ford, University of Michigan man who had Hail to the Victors played instead of Hail to the Chief when he entered a room as president of the United States. And there's that. But we're back to Michigan. He was a big Tigers fan, I'm sure. And so let's talk about if Gerald Ford would appreciate this team right now as it stands. Because I do, with a question mark, appreciate this team as it stands. Things that I'm concerned about, lots of issues that we've continued to talk about. But I did spend a lot of time this week reminding myself that one game under 500 is kind of more or less actually where I thought they'd be this season.
Right.
And that helped me navigate things like the 10-run blowout that Milwaukee put on them earlier in the weekend, the dropping the game Saturday, and then bouncing back and the bats coming to life on the Sunday game as we record following that game. So, Luke, how are you feeling about the team at this moment?
I mean, I think you said it pretty well. Kind of have to put it in perspective, because when you lose, I feel like in a sport like baseball, especially some of the losses the Tigers had this week, it is really hard, or it's really easy, I should say, it's really easy to kind of lose that mindset of putting things in perspective. I mean, when you look at the week, they went 3-3. They had a 500 week. They took 2 out of 3 from Texas. They lost 2 out of 3 to Milwaukee. Them's the rope sometimes. The team is... I'm struggling with the team for a multitude of reasons. There's games where they don't hit. There's games where they don't pitch. There's games where they don't play defense. And there's games like the Sunday finale where they beat up on a very good Milwaukee Brewers team, by no means a slouch of a team. And they did pretty much everything flawless. Now, for starters, when Tarek Skubal is on the mound at this point in time, he has kind of earned that reputation of this is our best pitcher. The bats are going to back him up. They're going to play defense. And 9 times out of 10, that has happened when Tarek Skubal has taken the mound this season. By far, I think the best pitcher in baseball right now. If the season were to end today, I think he would have the Cy Young wrapped up. If All-Star voting ended today, I would have to imagine he is the AL starter for this All-Star game. But some more months to come before any of that stuff is finalized. I wish, though, the offense and the defense and the bullpen even would treat every day like it's a Tarek Skubal start. If they did that, I am convinced this would be the best team in baseball, truly. However, when Skubal isn't on the mound, this team really chooses to roll the dice. And, at the beginning of the season, we were loving this bullpen. And we were like, it's all right. They're winning these close games because of the bullpen. And we were willing to kind of let the lack of offense slide because the bullpen was holding up their end of the bargain. Well, now that's not really the case. And when our offense is still scuffling and you've got a bullpen that can't hold a lead, it's a recipe for disaster, which is kind of what we saw even a little bit this week. I mean, they got blown out on the finale game against Texas and then the first game against Milwaukee. I think they were outscored 19-1 between those two games. I mean, that's pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic. Didn't help, I know, that on the finale game, Kenta Maeda left after 2 pitches, but let's not be coy here. Even if he stayed in for 5 innings, he still was probably going to get rocked. Kenta Maeda, I'm sorry. I know it's June. I know there's more time left. I think if they got him to the 2-year deal, I've got no faith in this guy. He is serving batting practice every time he's on the mound. I have little to no faith in him. And then the problem with a guy like Kenta Maeda is he'll get rocked for 4 starts in a row, but then he'll go out there and throw like 5 innings of no-run baseball, and they'll be like, well, yeah, Kenta's good. He's solid. He can be a number 5. It's like, no, he's not. He's not a number 5. Right. He's not. He is by far the weakest link in this rotation. Casey Mai is not too far behind him. He's been pretty dreadful as of late as well. And Reese Olson, who I love and has had some really bad luck this season, his last 2 starts have also not been great. So right now, they're essentially rocking with a very 50-50 bullpen, a pretty still mediocre offense, not a great defense, and a starting rotation that consists of, I'm going to go 3 out of 5 really reliable guys, even though Reese Olson has been rocked lately. Still, he hasn't done anything to lose my trust yet. Just some bad luck. Jack Flaherty's been a little bit banged up. His start's going to get pushed back this upcoming week until I believe it's Friday. And then you've got Tarek Skubal, who's the man. So overall, how do I feel about this team? More or less what you said. I think we're in the spot we probably all thought we'd be in at this point in the season. I feel like there's a couple of games they should have had. I really think this is a team that should be more like 3-4 over 500. But considering the fact they're 1 under, it's June, they're 2 games out of the wild card. I guess I'll take it. Who knows? Check in with me in a couple weeks.
On the bullpen, I went pretty deep into Statland on Baseball Reference. And what inning of the game do you think is the worst inning ERA for the Tigers as a team?
We're talking this season, correct?
In what inning do you think that they have the highest ERA?
I'm going to go later in the game because overall starting pitching has been good this season. So I'm going to say the 9th inning.
That is correct. It is a 5.66 ERA in the 9th inning, which is a big reason why they're 1 game under 500 and not a few games over 500 is when you're giving up, 5.5 runs in the 9th inning on an average basis. That's bad. That's a big lead that's an insurance run getting you from like 6-run lead to 7 runs as opposed to, like a 2 runs to 3 runs. After that, the actually next worst inning for the Tigers is the 2nd inning, which also doesn't surprise me, kind of based on what we've seen in terms of how the starters have struggled in spots. And then the other spot being the 6th inning is the other one with an over 5, which is, you're in that third, maybe starting the 4th time into the order, the starters pitch count's getting high and you're bringing in the relievers. So it is a high leverage situation. But in terms of like looking at, I know AJ doesn't like the idea of a true closer. like the ERA of the inning is showing that we probably need somebody who can slam the door at the end of the game, because doing it by committee is clearly not working with the committee we have assembled. So maybe we should explore some different opportunities there of finding a true closer, finding somebody that can actually come into those high leverage spots in the way that we want them to, and complete saves.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that's also clear with this team is that right now, the confidence that I had in a multitude of guys at the beginning of the year is gone. There's not really
Mm-hmm.
any one. If you had to ask, like, all right, you got a one run lead heading into the ninth, who you calling out? I'd still probably call out Foley. I still think he's got the best stuff and the highest ceiling. But you know, back in April, you could have said, "I'll take anyone." Throw in Chafin, throw in Foley, throw in Lang, throw in Shelby Miller, throw in Faedo. You know, whomever it may be. And now, outside of probably Foley, I wouldn't trust any of those guys. Chafin is awful.
Yep.
Alex Lang's not even in the major leagues right now. Faedo is hurt. Tyler Holton had a great year last year, has definitely kind of declined this year. Declined. Joey Wentz, how this man is still employed by a Major League Baseball team should be a science experiment that should be studied closely for the next 60 years, because he is complete dog shit as a pitcher. And I hate to pile on a guy, but you can tell there are certain guys sometimes who have that mentality, who have that confidence, who have that swagger. Mm-hmm. Joey Wentz enters his appearance, he enters his workday, and he already looks defeated, and he hasn't even thrown a pitch yet. The way he carries himself, his body language, just the overall vibe. When I watch this guy, I'm like, yeah, he's given up at least 1 or 2 runs today. There's no doubt about it. He has no confidence, absolutely zero confidence. And it probably doesn't help when people on the internet are calling him dog shit, but I mean, dog shit is what dog shit does. And the man was given a plethora of opportunities last year due to pitching injuries, and he scuffled each and every one of them. So I'm shocked he is still a major league pitcher with the Detroit Tigers. Then, you got your middle of the guys, Will Vest, Shelby Miller just came back from injury. So yeah, it's an interesting conundrum right now. I don't feel really great with this bullpen, which sucks to say, because I feel like it was just a couple weeks ago we were singing the praises of Chris Fetter and Robin London, Juan Nieves, and still doing that. Those guys are great. I still think we should be building a Chris Fetter statue. He resurrects so many corpses from the dead in terms of pitchers. It's remarkable. Jack Flaherty, living proof of that right now.
Yeah,
but it's a tough spot to be in when you've got a kind of 50-50 pitching rotation. You've got a mediocre offense and a bullpen that is now starting to scuffle. And I hate to be a pessimist, but I feel like this team is truly like one bad, like 7-8 game losing streak away from just being like, well, this thing's done. I mean, the Tigers cannot afford a big losing streak. Even if they drop another like 5 or 6 in a row like they did back in May, I think that sinks their ship. And I hate to play the pessimist card because we're only in June. I know there's a lot of more months still to go, but that's just how I feel with this team right now. This team right now doesn't strike me as a team that's ever going to rally off a nice 7 to 8 game winning streak. So if that were to happen on the other end of the coin with a losing streak, I think they're dead in the water, personally. I don't think they've got the gunpowder, the manpower, whatever you want to call it, to bounce back from something that big. So I hope it doesn't happen. Hope history does not repeat itself, because I do believe it was last year in the month of June. That's where they went on that bad 9 game losing streak, and that really sunk their season. I kind of have a vibe that's the direction we're heading in, but every time I feel like they're about to drop 2 or 3 more in a row, they do pull out a win like this Sunday where they kind of beat up on a fairly good team. You're like, damn, where'd that come from? So
yeah, I definitely, coming into the Sunday game, I was feeling that way about the team after the Friday night loss, and then the kind of the way that they blew the game on Saturday. I was like, okay, well, I mean, this is kind of put up or shut up time in terms of, can this team bounce back? Otherwise, I think it's going to be trouble coming into this next week. But that they were able to not only win today and save a win in the series, they won very convincingly. They looked great doing it. So it was nice to see that. Yeah, but I completely agree with you that I think anything like a 5 or 6 game losing streak is disaster for the year, and I think it forces them into a situation where they are more on the seller side of the equation of buyer versus seller at the trade deadline, as opposed to if we're sitting 2 games out of the wild card, I think you got to be a buyer at the trade deadline, and you got to be trying to load up to get into the playoffs, to give that to your fan base, who has been waiting a very, very, very long time for that to be the reality. And like right now, looking at the kind of Baseball Reference playoff odds, like the Tigers are 13% to make the postseason, which is not nothing. And you think if they can be battling right around that 500 mark in the mix, that number continues to creep up. You add a bat and you add some relief pitching, maybe a closer, to this roster, and it's like, okay, yeah, like this is a team that can make the playoffs. I don't know what they would end up doing in the playoffs, but it's a team that could make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. I've kind of thought about that, and again, time will tell because we've got a lot of baseball between now and the end of July. But let's go with your hypothetical that they're 2 or 3 games over approaching the trade deadline. I have a very hard time seeing Scott Harris going out and making a big move. I feel like Scott Harris, we've only had him around for not even 2 years yet, and I've got a pretty good idea of who this guy is. I don't foresee him ever, at least, while we're like, it's time. If you're within striking distance, strike, because we're tired of waiting. Scott's going to be like, well, we could do that, or we could wait another 2 years and make sure there's a clear pathway for Jace Young to get to the majors, or Max Clark to get to the majors, or Kevin McGonigal to get to the majors. And it's like, I do understand, I guess, that side of it, the analytics side, the strategy side of it. But as a fan, I'm like, I'm done. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired. We've waited long enough. If you've got a chance to go for it, go for it. I'm not saying unload the farm 100%, but make some moves. Put yourself in a position where you can go out and add a bat, where you can add that relief pitcher. You can add a starting pitcher to take the place of can't pitch Maeda, to come out and maybe put this team, towards a trajectory of making the postseason. And then when you're in the postseason, anything can happen. Look at the Diamondbacks. Look at the Phillies of recent years. Got in, anything can happen. That's the name of the game there. So I hope that happens. I hope Scott Harris kind of grows those cojones and does it. I don't think it happens. I'm more curious to see, and this is just kind of, again, the pessimist in me, if this team is out of contention come deadline and we are selling, how does Scott handle his second year in a row? Because let's call it how it was. Now that the dust is settled, he blew that trade deadline last year. He absolutely let Eduardo Rodriguez walk for nothing. Absolutely got nothing in return. How you leave is
because
tearing
also
it up in the minors right now.
Because also we're sitting here saying, even if we'd held on to Eduardo Rodriguez, we would have nothing right now.
Mm-hmm. He's hurt. So, how you leave from that Michael Lorenzen trade, just putting up some good numbers right now in the minors, and that's awesome. Hopefully that translates to the majors whenever he gets called up, but that's not a guarantee. And there was never even a guarantee had he moved Erod. I'm not saying any of the prospects we would have gotten back would have been all-stars. I'm not saying that. But the fact that it was almost like you did nothing and your silence spoke volumes for me. So we will see. I think if this team, again, I've said it all season long, nothing's changed. But if this team is selling at the deadline, say goodbye to Jack Flaherty. But beyond Jack Flaherty and maybe a relief pitcher, if someone really gets going here these next couple weeks, I don't know what trade pieces the Tigers honestly have. Because had a guy like Casey Mize been pitching well, or Matt Manning been pitching well, then maybe you start looking at getting a nice little return in for those guys. But they haven't performed. There's no one on offense who's screaming, get me, outside of maybe a Matt Vierling. Maybe if Mark Canha's numbers, kind of bolster these next few weeks, he kind of increases his trade value. But no one's looking right now to add, I guess, Gio Urshela. No one's looking right now to add Zach McKinstry or Javi Baez. No one's taking that contract. No one's touching that thing with a 10-foot pole. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think Flaherty, if they're not playing well, is as good as gone. The only guy who I think right now is untouchable and I think should be untouchable on the pitching side of things is Skubal. I do not want to see them trade Skubal and try to get some big haul in return. I think ride the hot hand. He's your best player on your team right now. Keep him. And if I'm the Tigers, I'm drawing up the papers to lock him up for an extension, personally. Offensively, it's a little bit harder to get a gauge of who they would say yay or nay. I mean, like a Justin Henry Malloy, probably not getting traded. Kerry Carpenter's hurt, not going to happen. Riley Green, probably not going to happen. Colt Keith, they signed him to that 6-year deal. That's not happening. Spencer Torkelson, I guess we can get on this conversation now, is not even in the major leagues. So
talk about Torque. Our best prospect
Mudhen.
Available for trade?
I guess so. He's a Toledo Mudhen. You know, excuse me, I almost called him his last nickname, and I said I will not do that because he doesn't hit like a Torque. He hits like a Spencer, and until I see otherwise, he is Spencer in my book. Spencer is, I don't really know what to do with the guy. They send him down. I think that was definitely the right move. Automatically just starts raking in the minors. Absolutely is just smashing AAA baseball. The pitching, he's just obliterating it. But the question now becomes, how long is he down there? I personally think they're leaving him down there for a little bit. I don't think he's back up next week. I think you see him sometime either in July or after the All-Star break or the trade deadline. I mean, I guess all those would technically be in July. But, yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what to do with the guy. He's a hot mess.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree that I don't think we see, but barring an injury, of course, that we don't see him for a while. Because I think one of the things that I hope that they want to see from him is consistently mashing, and that obviously they are also, you know, it is AAA pitching is more forgiving than major league pitching, and so they're also, whether or not the numbers look good, they're looking at the mechanics of his swing right now and saying, is that fixed? Is the approach at the plate fixed? Or is he mashing a home run off of a guy who left a mistake pitch that he's like not going to see in Major League Baseball out over the plate for him? So I mean, I think that, yeah, I completely agree with you that I think it's at least post All-Star break that we see him back, barring an injury that kind of requires him to come back up, because I do think that they need to see that longevity of production return so that he can A, get his confidence back up as a hitter, and B, fix those approach issues and say, okay, great, this is what I was doing that was doing this. As the pitchers get better, maintain this approach, I will find the success.
I think what they should do, and they'll never do this, but this is what I think they should do, because when Spencer Torkelson was up here, not only was he just looking abysmal at the plate, but in particular, he couldn't hit a fastball. And we're not talking, you know, a Tarek Skubal 101, 102 mile per hour fastball. We knew he couldn't hit those. We're talking like a Kenta Maeda 89 mile per hour meatball he couldn't hit. So I think before they bring or even consider bringing him back up to the major leagues, they should have Kenta Maeda go out there, throw him an inning of batting practice of just straight 90 mile per hour fastballs. And if he is late on any of those, if he is behind, if he's not making solid contact, if he's not driving the ball, lifting the ball, whatever it may be, he stays in Toledo. That should be his final test. Because I'm sorry, if you can't hit a 91 mile per hour fastball right down the heart of the plate, you're never going to make it in the major leagues. Just them's the ropes. It's a cutthroat business, boys, but that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. So he's got a lot of work to do. I'm glad to see he's having success. You know, it's interesting right now on Tigers Twitter. I really know you're not much on Twitter anymore, Alex, but there's a lot of division amongst the fans right now. Like people being like, no one wants to see Spencer Torkelson succeed. Everybody just wants to bash him. And then there's another camp too that still thinks he's going to pan out and he's going to be like the next, you know, Miguel Cabrera. And I'm somewhere in the middle. I definitely don't want the guy to fail by any means, but I'm also done rewarding mediocrity and below average performances. I'm done with it. So yeah, he was a first overall pick. And in 3 years in the major leagues, the guy has sucked. He's been terrible. He hit 31, 33, whatever it was, home runs last year, and that was great. It looked like a step in the right direction, but you got to keep in mind, put it into context like we talked about earlier. The guy looked terrible in 2022. So showed some progress in 23, and now he has gotten even worse than he was in 2022 and 2024. So through 3 years or 2.5-ish years and some change, whatever you want to call it, of Spencer Torkelson being a major league hitter, he has been a bust. he has been terrible. And for a 1-1, the guy has been playing at a completely inexcusable and unforgivable level. I don't wish ill will on him. I don't think he's a bad person. By all accounts, he seems like a cool dude. Would love to grab a beer with him sometime. But as a major league player, he has dropped the ball time and time again. So he's got a lot of work to do I think, to salvage his career, because I think he is at a critical point where it is truly put up or shut up time. Now, granted, again, we don't know what the future holds. He could be in AAA the rest of the year. Next year, he could hit 40 home runs and become the next Miguel Cabrera. We don't know. Do I think that's going to happen? Hell no. Absolutely not. But it could. There's always the could game. He's got a lot of work to do, and I wish him the best. I hope it works out for him. I want him to succeed. I want him to succeed in Detroit. But right now, I think if you're the Tigers, you have to start thinking about what does our future look like at first baseman beyond Spencer Torkelson. And I think there's a lot of players, for the record, that you have to start asking yourself that question. Starting pitching was supposed to be this great asset that they had going into the year. Well, then you lose Sawyer Gipson-Long. Then Matt Manning doesn't really provide much of relief when he came up in his limited innings. Kenta Maeda has been bad. Jack Fleury's now a little bit banged up. Casey Mize, who started off the year strong, is looking terrible now too. So that's the thing I think most people are pissed about now. You've got two former 1-1s in Casey Mize and Spencer Torkelson. One of them's a minor leaguer. One of them is completely unreliable on the mound. Those are big problems. That's honestly maybe the biggest swing and miss, no pun intended, of the Al Avila regime, minus getting nothing back for guys like JD Martinez and Verlander. But there are some, we're going to have an interesting offseason episode of cut 'em or keep 'em this year, because there are a lot of guys who just 2 or 3 years ago, or even hell going into this season, we were like, this is the time these guys step up. Mm-hmm. They're not doing it. They're not cutting it. And it's kind of crazy to think this window of talent that we thought we'd be watching for years, the Mize, the Mannings, the Scoobles, the Torkelsons, the Riley Greens, the Kerry Carpenters, the Colt Keiths. We thought this would kind of be the nucleus of the core to lead us to the promised land. I think there's a pretty good chance some of those guys aren't even on the team next year. And we'll see. There's a couple guys who I think are safe. Again, I don't think Colt Keith is going anywhere. I don't think Riley Green's going anywhere. When Kerry Carpenter's been healthy, been fairly reliable. Scooble, I say lock him up, get him that extension. But, you look at a Manning, a Mize, a Spencer Torkelson, a guy who I love, a Jake Rogers. I don't really know where he fits into the equation. Had a great game today in the Milwaukee finale. And I still think, he could be a piece somewhere along the line of this overall puzzle. But I don't know. A lot of big questions to be answered this offseason. And I think we might even get some answers before then. So it'll be interesting to think. I'd like to pose a question to you, because I want to stop talking, and I want to feed it to you. I tweeted this out during yesterday's game, and it's kind of a weird thing to tweet, but I'm curious to hear your stance on it. I said, and I stand by this, with the exception of a couple players, this Tigers team, take talent out of the equation, is probably the most unlikable Tigers team I've ever watched in my lifetime. And I'm not saying they're all horrible human beings who, are like terrible people off the field. I guess what I'm saying is I don't feel a connection with a lot of these players. There's a couple of guys I enjoy watching. Tarek Skubal would be one of them. Riley Green would be one of them. Jake Rogers, I know he doesn't always put up the best numbers, but I've always been a Jake Rogers fan. I always kind of had that vibe. I was like, I like this guy. I like the mustache. I like how he play. I like him. I like Jake Rogers. But beyond those guys and maybe a couple more, there's not many guys on this team that I'm like, yes, absolutely. Gio Urshela, let's do it. Let's get that jersey. Come on now. Let's get it going for Jack Flaherty. Let's do it, Andrew Chafin. Come on down, Will Vest. Even, and this is what the second part of my tweet was, when this team was really bad, like really bad in 2018 through like 2020, 2021, by that point in time, Verlander was gone. Mm-hmm. Victor Martinez was kind of on his last life. Miggy was still there, and obviously we all know our thoughts on Miggy. He's a legend. But, some of those namestays from like the early 2010s, they were all pretty much kind of weeded out by then. Even when it was those really bad Ron Gardenhire teams, there were still guys on that team I genuinely liked. Jamer Candelario, Michael Fulmer, Jonathan Scope, Robbie Grossman, Eric Haas. The amount of times we said Matthew Boyd is the best human being in baseball on this show. If we had $1 for every time we said that, we would be millionaires. Probably trillionaires, honestly, at this point. So I guess the point I'm making, to kick it back to you, this team, for me, doesn't have much of an identity. It doesn't really have much of that kind of that swagger, that pulse, that fight. I think overall, they're a pretty unlikable bunch in the sense of I just don't feel a lot of connection with a lot of these guys. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would use the word unlikable. I think I would use the word boring. And I think that it's what actually like really kind of symbolizes it for me is the home run celebration. Like, it's funny. I got some good laughs. I enjoyed it for a game or two. But now I'm like, oh, we're just doing a little Caesars commercial every time we hit a home run. And so, okay, like, it doesn't have the same, there's no swagger to it. Like the Blue Jays brought back the home run jacket. That there's a swagger to putting that jacket on. There was a swagger to the hockey stick in the dugout, and it's just okay, I'm just gonna like hold this stick and give guys high five. Like, that's like there's no swagger to this team. And especially like you think about a guy like Javi Baez, who early in his career was very much defined by how much swagger he played the game with. And we see moments of it sometimes. Usually when they're in Chicago is like the only time we really see it.
Or the Arizona series.
Yeah, but like he's been so bad with the Tigers that even he's like not feeling his own swagger in those moments throughout. And so like he's also not like Javi made 2 or 3 incredible throws this week, incredible defensive plays, and then also threw the ball 6 feet up the line a couple of times. And so it can't even like, you can't even like that you have who could be baseball's biggest heel on your team. And like, there's not like, that's not even fun, because as we hear me say in the opening every week, surely Javi can't be as bad this year as he was last year. And he continues to like, we see flashes of what it should have been. And then we see even more evidence of what it is there. Yeah. And like, even like Riley Green, I really like Riley Green, but like, what is Riley Green's personality as a baseball player? Jake Rogers is probably the only guy on the roster right now who like, I have a very kind of distinct idea of like what Jake's personality is as a baseball player, and like how he approaches the game, that he's often the jokester on the team, that he's bringing moments of levity in a lot of situations. He's a great guy to have mic'd up because he is funny, quick-witted, which also was true of Miguel Cabrera. That like the reason we love Miggy so much is not that Miggy was a great hitter. It is the way in which Miggy approached the game of baseball while being a great hitter. And that it was like Miguel Cabrera is having fun every time he steps on this baseball field, and we're all having fun with him. And there's not even like, this guy's playing with a chip on his shoulder every time he steps on, and we're like, we're rooting for him to give the finger to all the people that didn't believe. Like, there's nothing. There's just no personality to this team. And again, love AJ Hinch. He is one of the most boring managers in baseball. Like, I hate Aaron Boone, but I really like I have more fun watching Aaron Boone manage a baseball game than I do AJ Hinch, because Boone will get into it with umpires. It has some of that feel of old school baseball, And there's just none of that from the Tiger dugout.
I mean, it's an organizational thing overall. They've got a mundane owner. They've got a Poindexter of a president of baseball operations in Scott Harris. AJ Hinch, I think, is a very smart manager. I do think he's probably one of the smartest managers in the game, but he's mundane and boring as hell. And then I think you've got a young core of guys who is so void of a leader now that Miggy is gone, and they're trying so desperately to be this young, flashy, fun team like the Orioles or the Phillies, and they're just not that. They're boring. They're dull. There's no life to it. There's no juice, like a good Italian beef sandwich. There's no juice on it. It's not dipped. You need that juice, man. And I agree. Maybe unlikable isn't the right word. Maybe boring is the more proper word. But then the reason why I think unlikable is a fair word is because who is your benchmark of your supposed big time contract player? Your all-star. You're a guy who's supposed to put this team on the back and win. Javier Baez.
Yep.
And when I'm watching the $25 million man, yeah, like you said, making some really nice plays at shortstop, a couple of plays make you go, damn, Javi's good. But then watching him throw the ball 6 feet up the line, or, hitting a $184 on the season for the third season in a row, it's a little bit hard for me to be like, yeah, this guy's not very likable. Take on top of that, I think sometimes he is a bit of a douchebag in his own kind of personal way on and off the field and the way he kind of approaches the game of baseball. Say what you will about Jose Valverde. Teams hated going against Valverde back in the day because he was cocky, had his whole kind of, post-save celebration. And as Tiger fans, we were fortunate enough to be on the side of his successes. But, winning helps a lot too. Winning helps a lot. If this team was 10 games over 500 right now, I don't know if we're having this conversation. And also maybe it's because just after years of losing, we're just kind of, I think, just like seething at the mouth that we finally just want to have some competent baseball back in Detroit at a consistent level. And I just think it's, for me, it's just a team that is trying so hard to be this young, flashy team and is still 2 to 4 years away from being there. They've got some guys in the minors right now, a Max Clark, a Jace Young, some of those names, some of those offensive studs that you hope are going to come up and kind of be that next generation of guys. Spencer Torkelson, he's going to be when he gets to the majors, that guy's going to do big things, trust me. But I do think you are correct, though, too, and people might be like, these guys are conspiracy theorists, but I'm with you. I think the pizza celebration is a curse to this team. I think they need to get rid of it. And for the record, who introduced the pizza celebration this season? Spencer Torkelson. So if I were the Tigers, I think it is time to do away with the pizza celebration. You can bring back the hockey celebration, which was totally fun, totally a great time. Detroit is known for being a hockey town. They literally have hockey town within the city of Detroit. Bring that one back or create something new. This pizza celebration, though, as someone who loves pizza, it's my favorite food. It's got to go. It's plaguing this team. It's plague. Also, you can't be a team who your league leader in home runs right now is at 11. And that's your celebration. I don't even think if you're not like hitting a certain quota with home runs per season, I don't think there should be a rule that you can even have a home run celebration. It's come back into the dugout, give a couple of high fives, and sit back down. I think that's how. When you're a Marcelo Zuna or a Yordan Alvarez or a Kyle Tucker, all these big names who are hitting bombs after bombs after bombs, by all means, go ahead. Have your wacky over-the-top celebrations. But when, it's like Riley Green's our leader at 11 and it's midway through June, it's a little embarrassing. Embarrassing. But I'm for the celebration, but I think it might be time to alter it. And especially considering the source material of where it came from with it being Torkelson, I think it's time to put that one to bed. So it's an interesting... The Tigers are just in such a weird place right now. Well, yeah. Numbers on paper, they are better than they have been in recent years. I will give them that 100%. But overall, it's not like it's this overwhelming success. There's still a lot of issues, and I stand by what we said a little earlier in the show. This team is one bad 6 or 7 game losing streak away from this season being over. And it could happen this week. I know they got Washington on the road, and then I believe, I'm not mistaken, don't we have Atlanta too coming up? Yeah, it goes Washington, Houston, who, regardless of record, is always a scrappy team, and then Atlanta. So they're on the road for home against Washington, on the road for Houston, on the road for Atlanta, and then they finish out the month against the White Sox. Hopefully get some wins there. The Phillies, who are freaking phenomenal this season, better than I think any of us expected. I think we thought they'd be good. I didn't think we'd think they'd be great, and that's what they are. They're a great baseball team, and they end against the Angels, who suck. They are fun to watch. Yes, the Phillies are fun to watch. The Braves, very fun to watch, And I think I've said it. I've said it for years on this show. Winning is a mindset. It's a confidence. It's not just skill. It's how you carry yourself. It's how you go out there as a team, as an organization. And there's nothing about this Tigers organization right now that screams confidence, that screams swagger. It's a bunch of guys who's kind of like, well, I think this is going okay. This is kind of working. Don't pay any attention to this shit that's not working, but this stuff is kind of working. And that's the problem. There's no identity with this team. This team sorely misses Miguel Cabrera. I don't give a shit that he was 40 years old, can only hit 3 home runs a year. A guy like that, his presence, his aura of just being there made this team, in some ways, must-see TV, which is pretty remarkable considering how bad they were for many of the years that he was on this team and playing every day. And a guy like Miguel Cabrera, it's going to be a long time coming if it ever happens again in our lifetime that we see a guy who's got that level of talent, but that level of kind of confidence and just brings that love and that energy and that passion to the game that just transcends them through generations of fans. I think right now we got a lot of guys on the Tigers who are trying to do that, but they're just failing miserably. So let's get it back to basics. Let's play some clean, competent, consistent baseball. When the wins start rolling in on a more consistent basis, I think the fans will be along with you for the ride. Again, winning always does cure everything. The problem with this Tigers team right now is they're just incredibly inconsistent. And it's June 9th and we're recording this episode. I've got more questions than I do on June 9th than going in when we started this season on whatever it was, March 31st, April 1st. And I know that's part of the game. Things happen, but it's just a lot of questions, and we're not getting a ton of answers right now. That's where we're at.
I agree completely, Luke, and we will be back in the near future to talk more about the answers to those questions. Luke, have a great week.
See you, buddy.